it's Greg Otten here with MaritimeGardening.com. It's the beginning of March, and if you're an ancient Roman, it's the beginning of the year. I'm guessing that was, other than the connection with Mars, the god of war, and the guardian of agriculture and all that sort of stuff, the significance would be in that part of the world. That's when spring would begin. Sometime around there. It's a bit colder here, so we use different rubrics. Our spring from a planting point of view is usually beginning of April at some point, give or take a week or so, depending on the year, or even later, depending on how harsh the winter was. Anyway, I can't plant the 1st of March in the ground because it's frozen, but we can trick the soil. We can trick our garden. We can use tricks. And I've done a number of things here in this garden to try to bring the spring forward a month or so to get things started. And I didn't do a proper job. I should have had some of these domes and things like this in place before the winter hit. That would have kept the soil from freezing up too bad. I didn't do that. Also here where I live, Nova Scotia, we had a very peculiar winter. It was a relatively warm winter. If you look at average temperatures, which you think would be good, but if it's going below zero every night, sometimes well below zero into the teens, I'm talking Celsius here, the fact that you don't have any snow is a bad thing because there's nothing to insulate the ground. So you get a bit of snow and then maybe you get a bit of rain because it maybe gets up above zero during the day when it's snowing, actually raining, and then all that becomes ice in the ground and freezes the soil. So for those who have been watching, you see me out in my garden in the winter, there's not a lot of snow around. You'd think that would be a good thing, that would bring things earlier in the year, but it's not, because when we don't have snow, we don't have a constant, consistent layer of snow, the ground just, all that water, it doesn't stop raining here, we just get like rain, slush, snow, ice rain, all these different kinds of rain, and all that water goes into the ground, and it freezes in the ground, and takes a long time to thaw out. So some of these hoop houses have been on the ground for about a month now, starting the beginning of February. Again, they should have been on the ground end of December to keep things from freezing too badly. I didn't do that. The only area of my garden that had cover all winter is 2 of my cold frames over here, which actually are thawed. But everything else is some degree of frozen. Some of these hoops have been on for a while. But I thought I'd take you for a walk around and show you some of the things I'm doing here to try to thaw things out. If you live in a northern place and you want to get things going, you got to get your ground thawed. That's step one, right? If anything's going to germinate, and I do all my planting outside, I don't do any transplants inside. I do everything outside. And so in order to make that happen, you have to be ingenious in that regard. I still find that easier than having transplants inside, nursing them along in an artificial setting, and then trying to wean them off and harden them off and bring them out here. It seems to me when you direct seed things outside and it's under plastic or glass, they don't need to be hardened off. They've already gone through the extremes. Even in my cold frames where the soil hasn't frozen, the soil still freezes every night. And I don't know if it's still frozen right now, but we'll check. It's around 9 in the morning here. But we'll check. But the last few days when I've checked, I've noticed that the top inch or so of the soil in my cold frames, even the ones that didn't freeze this year, is hard, right? It froze. So let's have a look around. Let's just begin at the beginning and I can show you some things. Alright, so this bed over here had carrots in it last year. I took them out when the soil was freezing up and I didn't really get a proper mulch over this or anything, and it just laid bare most of the winter. Not good. So I put these square frames with plastic. Maybe I'll just lift one up and show you. I find these are, I have to keep everything weighted down because everything just blows away. We got so much wind here. I find these are a simple way to get things thawed out. They're also a good way to get stuff germinating because a little bit of heat never hurts, right? Every seed has a certain temperature it needs to be at to germinate, certain moisture level, certain temperature amount, and these can help in that regard as well. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, it's just a piece of wood. I put these metal things here
on both sides, right, to sort of hold them together. Seemed like a quick and easy way to do it. And it's closer here so you can see. Can't even see here, there's so much sun. Anyway, you get the idea, one of these things here. Alright? You can get those at any hardware store. I just put these on a week ago, so the soil is still hard as a rock here. There's no thaw going on here. Everything is hard. You can't move anything here. It's just frozen solid. I put these spruce boughs down just to impart a kind of dome effect, so that when it does rain or snow or whatever, it'll go off, so that well, A, it doesn't pool and turn to ice and that sort of stuff. B, you just get that dome effect, which is good for heating. Gives the air a place to go, and you know, warm air can sort of accumulate in this space here. I got about 4 inches of air space, and once the sun hits this and some of the heat goes in there, it can accumulate in there and maybe get this thing thawed out sometime before April 1st, hopefully. So that's the idea here. This isn't thawed at all, but it works. You can use anything for the plastic on these. I mean, you want heavier plastic. This is 6mm poly, what they use for vapor barrier when they're building houses. I believe this one here, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I bought a new bed for my son, and it came in a big plastic bag, you know, with a mattress. So let me put the camera on that. That one right there. So both of those were made from a bag that goes around a twin bed mattress. This didn't cost a thing. So if you were trying to save costs, you could, I don't know, hang around a store that sells mattresses, and maybe you'll find a bunch of these in their dumpster. It's not as heavy as that stuff. It's a bit thinner plastic, but it's relatively heavy. I mean, it's got to be strong enough to protect a mattress. I don't know how well it'll handle UV and all that sort of stuff, but I got it for nothing, so however long it lasts, right? These haven't been on that long either, so I imagine everything out here is still fairly fresh. Oh, wait a second. Hey, let's check. This has been on here maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks. So let's see. Let's see what we got here. Let's move this over. Get a stick in the ground. This is my high-tech soil tester. So just a pointed stick. So, I don't know, I'm getting down about 5 inches. That's not bad. Now this was just like raw horse manure I put on here in the fall, or right around December, I guess. The idea, thinking that it would generate heat. And if I'd had these on the whole winter, this would probably be some degree of thawed right now. I just put these on a couple weeks ago. But already, this is much further along than the one over there. I don't know. I go down really far if I can get through that. Let's find my shovel and see. For curiosity's sake. Well, that's a good way to break a shovel. Let's see here. Now, you hear that? So I'm down about 8 inches here, and she's ice. It's just ice. It's ice down there. So no miracles here, but that's only been a couple weeks, so it's still further along than that one. So we'll just leave that another couple weeks. Maybe I can plant here in another couple weeks. We'll see. Now this spot here, this is the first dome I put on. If you've been watching my videos, this is one of the ones I repaired. I had it stored back down there in the woods somewhere, and it got all smashed to pieces with the ice and all that's wind and stuff. But I fixed it, and it's just a a simple hoop house made with wire remesh and some cheap spruce lumber. But that's been on there a good month, I think. So let's see what's the state of the soil underneath this. This bed, unlike the other two, this bed was properly mulched at the end of the season. I covered the whole thing with, I don't know, about 3 inches of seaweed. Seaweed doesn't insulate as well as hay, in my opinion. We'll see that as we go around the garden, but it does, it's dark, so it draws, you know, it attracts the heat. So let's pop this off and see what's the state of the soil underneath here. Let's see what we're working with here. Well, it's not frozen in place, that's a good sign. Let's just that off. Had a little thermometer set up there. What's the thermometer say? Already, I mean, it's about 0 degrees outside right now, and or maybe 3 degrees Celsius. And it's been overcast all morning. It's been kind of raining off and on. The sun's just starting to try to fight its way through the cloud cover here. But this says it's 16 in here, according to this refrigerator thermometer. I find they're pretty good for this sort of thing. They're cheap, but they're reliable because it's not a spring thermometer, it's a liquid thermometer. So the air in here is 15. That's the other thing when you've got a good mulch and that sort of thing. It's breaking down. If you can get enough heat going on in here, that bioactivity will generate heat too. So anyway, let's use the old stick and see if we're thawed at all. Look at that. Looky that. Good thrust right there. Look at that. I got that right through. How about that? Let's bring the camera closer and have a look at the soil in there. All right, let's dig this up and have a look. Have a look-see. Of course, it's going to be more frozen near the edges, right, and more thawed near the middle because this is more exposed and it's above grade as well. You know what, there's still some ice in there, but it stops at a certain point. So I'd say we got the first 4 inches is thawed. Let's bring the camera even closer so you can see this. I'll zoom this in a bit here. Don't know how well this shows up on camera, but the first 4 inches is thawed. I could plant in that. Even though it's not completely thawed all the way through, I could conceivably plant in this because whatever's growing is just going to be growing in the first few inches. You know, and as the whatever I've planted grows, the thaw will continue down. But that thaw stops right around here, where it's hard, right? And then if you bust through that hard part, eventually you get to use a stick to do this. Almost like ice fishing. If you get through that part, that layer, then you're into the actual thaw. So I'd say we got 4 inches of thawed soil, and then we got about 3 inches of like an ice layer, and then once you get beneath that, it's completely thawed all the way down to the other side, right? All the way down to the other side of the globe. So that's a good sign. That's very promising, right? So we haven't got much further to go, and this dome's been on for a month. Again, if I just put it on around December, this would be already thawed. It would be ready to rock. So not ideal, but we could probably work with this. I could probably plant something. I have to look at my garden plan to figure out what on earth I'm going to plant here. But it's a start. A good sign of something. So that's the garden I was just in. If we look over here in the foreground, I have a, I don't know what the dimensions of this, maybe 4 by 6 or 3.5 by 6 foot bed. And these are just some old windows that someone threw away. And yeah, I should have scraped the paint off and made them nice and all that sort of stuff, but I didn't. Just using them as is. So I just put these on last weekend. But I had a really heavy layer of leaves on this all winter long. So this was just exposed all winter long right up until last weekend. And I check it periodically, and I noticed I could drive stakes into the soil, at least as I recall. We'll check today. But then I decided, just because I had these windows lying around, why don't I throw them on? So this way is south, so it's facing south, so I sloped it a little bit so it could, capture the heat a little bit. And pretty low tech. All I did was I moved the leaves around to make a sort of hole here and a hole here, and I piled them up to create a insulating seam where these two windows are, and I piled it up to make an insulating seam here. And then on the back here, I just had an old piece of, I'll pop this off, an old piece of 4x8 that my cousin gave me. Yeah, it's treated, it's not ideal, it's not going to be here all season, it's just here to warm the soil up. But it's just what I had, right? So I just threw this down and used the leaves to create like a insulation, like a caulk almost. And what I'm thinking I'll do when this thaws out a bit is whatever I'm going to grow in this bed, I can create little areas, maybe 2 feet square, where I grow things, right, here and here. And then once those things are up and things are doing really well, I take these off and then move, right, thin and move the plants to fill the whole bed. In a small area like this, where you've got a space maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, 2 feet by 2 feet, you can grow a lot of transplants. And that's my technique of transplanting. I grow things right in the soil. That way there's no problem with being root bound. And there seems to be much more available moisture. You don't have to worry about mold and all that nasty stuff that grows in your transplants. You don't have to worry about hardening things off because they've been exposed to the sun. You don't have to worry about hardening them off because they've been exposed to the temperature extremes that are outside. It's just a much easier process. They don't come in quite as fast as transplants in your house. But that makes up for itself in how hardy the transplants are when they're ready to be moved, right? So whatever I grow here might be the permanent resident of this garden. I might pluck them all out and put them somewhere else where they're better suited, depending on how I've planned out my gardening space, right? But let's see how thawed this is. Actually, it's thawed. Look at that. I just put these on last week, right? I had like maybe 6 inches of leaves on this all winter, and I just put this glass on last week. And it hasn't been like, ideal conditions here for the last few months. It's very overcast in the winter in this province. We don't get like ridiculous amounts of sun here. We get sun, but we don't. It's not a thing you depend on. Anyway, look at that. That is thawed all the way down. There's no frost line here. So, what's a better insulator, leaves or seaweed? Oh, the leaves win, right? This seaweed garden with the dome on it has had a dome on it for 1 month. This has had a dome on it for a week, and we're thawed here. Beautiful stuff. Now imagine if you get towards the edge. Let's see. Yeah, there's a bit of frost in the soil near the edge. I would say the outer 9 inches, you've got ice, right? But even that doesn't go down too deep. But the main thing is this middle part is thawed. So that's great stuff. I'll have to look at my garden plan, but I can definitely plant some things, some cold hardy things here. Anything, I mean, as a general rule of thumb, and you have to use your own judgment, your own experience, and just play around, trial and error, but as a general rule of thumb, anything that it says plant as soon as the soil can be worked, you can plant. Now, I would be careful, and you can't just plant anything. I don't plant root vegetables to be moved. I wouldn't plant parsnips or carrots here, because root vegetables hate being moved. I would only plant them here if I was going to keep them here. But if you were going to plant something like a Swiss chard or a kale or something of that nature, that's going to be that can handle being moved, or even be left here. I mean, I haven't looked at my garden plan, but this would be an ideal garden to plant kale here, and then once they're high and it's warmer outside a month from now, I can just thin them out and reposition them to fill this box. Chances are I'll have so much that I have even more than I can put in this box. Right? In my tiny cold frames that are 2 feet by 6 feet, one cold frame created enough kale transplants to fill an entire 4 by 10 bed easily, and that's with throwing away all the ones that weren't primo, right? So that's a good system. I'm very happy with that. That seems to have worked. Just put that back on. Good system. What we got here? Just some rocks and some old windows. Didn't cost anything. That's my kind of system. Everything needs a rock on it, it'll blow away. Same sort of system here, even more low tech. All I did was pile the leaves up a bit higher in the back instead of using a piece of wood, and just put an old window there. So let's see how this is doing. This is another bed where I just used leaves. I mean, I just use whatever I can find. I like to use different things to see the effect. So is the camera on that spot? Move that over a bit. Here's a spot with no window, and this was only put on a week ago. So let's try to drive her in here. That's pretty good. So that soil is thawed already, and this is just going to thaw that much quicker because it's got that heat in there, right? I imagine it's probably 12 degrees Celsius under that window, whereas it's about 5 degrees Celsius here. But I would venture to say that the soil underneath these leaves, for the most part, okay, there's some spots that are hard, yes, for sure. Okay, I was going to say it never froze in the winter, but no. Let's move the camera over to that part. You look over here. That's frozen, man. But maybe the leaves got blown away. Maybe they're thicker here. I don't know. I think it's just a sweet spot in the middle there. Seems to get through. Yeah, there's another spot there. Yeah, so if there's a line down the middle that seems to be thawed, and the outer edges seem to be a little less thawed, but the leaves are in a mound like this, so where the leaves are the thickest, I seem to have had the best insulation. And the reason this is all important is just means you can get planting that much sooner, especially if you're using some sort of dome or plastic or some means to capture, hold, and augment heat. Okay, here we have a garden where I grew kale last year, and just for demonstration purposes, and also, you know, being lazy purposes, I did not mulch this or anything. I just left it the way it was. So it had a bit of the existing mulch, but most of that's broken down. So this was mulched during the growing season last year with seaweed, but there's hardly any of that. It's all broken down, right? I didn't add any mulch in the fall like I did with most of my garden. So this is frozen, right? That's just ice. And it's not thawing anytime soon, right? I don't know what I'm planning to plant here, but whatever it is, it ain't going in this week. This is going to need some serious thawing. I think I was going to plant cucumbers here, to tell you the truth, but you can't plant cucumbers. You know, this part of the world, you can plant cucumbers. I generally find if you're just planting them outside in the bare soil without any protection, the seeds have a very poor germination rate unless you plant in June. I find when the leaf petals start falling off your tulips, that's a good sign that everything's right. I don't like using calendar dates. I like taking my signs from what's going on, right? Everything in the garden is reacting to conditions, and as you learn to read those things to tell you what to do, that's much more reliable because it's relative to your microclimate, right? Your particular growing conditions where you are, as opposed to using some calendar on the back of a seed pack. That's a good guideline, but your own garden and what's going on with your various perennials will tell you a lot more. Or other things, certain birds that show up or certain things that happen, right? All those things in nature All those things don't happen unless conditions are right. But we can do another episode on that. I'm getting off topic here. Topic today is what's thawed and what's not. What is thawed and what ain't thawed. This ain't thawed. You look over here, this perimeter of the garden, it's all strawberries, and this is all frozen, right? But I just let them, I don't bother with plastic and anything like that. The strawberries will come along when they're ready and they'll be fine. I covered this whole strawberry bed with seaweed at the end of the year, seaweed and hay. I had hay over, way over there at the end, and this end seaweed. That's just what I had, and I was just, you don't have to follow any rules, you just work with what you got. All right, we got a bed right here. Let's have a look at this baby. So these two domes went on, I think, the same day, and that was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, so not as long as the other one. I don't recall exactly. Let's pop one of these off and see what we're dealing with. This bed had zucchini in it last year. It had a very good yield. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to plant here this year. I've got it all mapped out. I don't recall any of that. I got a terrible memory for things like that. So this is mulched with hay. Nothing fancy, just spoiled hay from a horse stable. Well, the top is thawed. It's loose. At least the top 4 inches. All right, we're working with some nice loose soil. Let's try the stick test. In. Let's get the homemade digger. Bring the camera in a little closer and have a look at that. So I didn't start with any of these domes until February, and I'm guessing this one didn't freeze up quite as hard as the seaweed one because the hay is just a better insulator. So let's see what we got here. I don't want to mix that in. I want the mulch on top, and I want, look at that. Look at that. That's what a dome does. March 1st, I'm in the top 2 inches of my soil. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a worm doing his thing, right? He's not hibernating, he's working, right? He's happy. So already the worms are active in my soil beginning of March. Minus, it's probably -4 outside right now, but it was well below 0 last night. But this dome seems to be doing wonders. Combination of this dome and this hay. It's great to see worms working in the soil this early in the year. There's absolutely no frost in this. There's nothing. This is completely thawed. Unlike the seaweed one over there that's had a dome on it for a month, this has only had a dome on for a couple weeks. But this hay has done wonders. And this was frozen. When I put the dome on, I checked it. That thing would not go through. It was hard. But I'm guessing it wasn't frozen quite as deeply as the seaweed one. I'm guessing it was just, maybe there was a couple inches of ice as opposed to like 6 inches of ice underground. Right, this is a wet part of the world. We get a lot of rain here in the winter. We get snow, and then it rains, and then snow, and then it rains, and it's -20, and then it's +5, and then it's +8, and then it's -15, all over the place. The ground freezes here because there's no snow that stays on the ground to keep it regulated. So the only way to work within those conditions is to imitate what the snow would do by using a nice mulch. And I love seaweed as a mulch. It does a lot of good things, but from a heat holding, heat generating, heat insulating point of view, at least over the dead of winter, this hay rocks. This is the thing. And for a lot of people, that's easier to source than seaweed. I mean, if you live in a coastal region like me, you can source seaweed for free. Check your local laws and all that. I'm harvesting dead seaweed, but I can also get this for free because it's spoiled stable hay. And yeah, there's plenty of seeds in it. There's seeds right there. There's oats or something like that. But generally speaking, and if you are a fan of Ruth Stout, you'd be surprised. There are weeds, but there's not as many as you think, and there's many strategies you can use to minimize that to a point where it's just not a chore. It just isn't. I don't spend hardly any time weeding in my garden. So I'm happy with that. Let's check this one over here. Still got some battery here. Still going good. All right, this is the other dome. So these two went on around the same time. This one was mulched with hay and seaweed. I think I put hay down and then I put seaweed on top, or vice versa. I can't recall. Let's have a look. Oh my goodness, I can't tell you how great it feels to be out in the garden in the sun. Even if you got to wear a toque to do it, it's still nice. Still pleasant, still uplifting. All right. Let's see here. Any vampires in here? They're doomed. Let's drive this in. Thawed, man. Thawed. Beautiful. That is completely thawed. So this was, my theory here was I'd have the seaweed because it's dark, but underneath the seaweed I got hay for the insulative properties of the hay. We go down far enough. Holy Moses, I put a lot on here. Go down far enough, we have the soil, and the soil is thawed. You'll have to trust me. The soil is thawed. There's a bit of a frost layer in some of the top layer of seaweed. See, a bit of snowy type stuff there. But there's no ice in here. I can break it with my hands, right? I can get through that with my hands. That's just frost in this straw, which would also, like a layer of snow, it traps air and has an insulative property. If we get down in here, we got soil, thawed soil, right? Couldn't do that over there. Certainly the garden I didn't do nothing to. That's just ice, right? It's good I left that one just for comparison purposes. My whole garden would be just a block of ice were it not for these domes. I think I'm going to plant kale in that one. Alright, so these rock gardens, still have some battery here, yeah. These rock gardens, there's no dome. I mean, there's one over here. Let's start over here. Why not? I had a couple scraps of plastic. This is a relatively small garden, so I just draped them over there. And the great thing about the rocks is if you can get them out of the ground when they're frozen in, you just give them hit them with a stick or something. There was hay on this all winter, and then I just about a week or so ago draped the plastic over the hay and held it down with some rocks. And it's a dome, right? And I'm not going to bother removing all of that. But the ground is thawed in there, right? There wasn't much to do. It really didn't start to freeze until sometime in February, and it barely froze with that heavy, nice heavy layer of hay. I wasn't happy with the results I got in this garden last year, so I put some manure and some paper and some hay in fall, thinking that the seeds in the manure would germinate, hit the paper, die, and all of that would keep it nice and warm over the winter. So this one's pretty much ready to rock. I have no idea when I'm going to plant there, but it's ready to go. These other gardens, like this one here, so if you followed last summer, this was all beans, and all I did at the end of the year was cut the beans off with a pair of scissors and put about 4 inches of seaweed over it. No plastic, no dome, no nothing. Let's see. All right. I'm a big guy, pretty strong. That's about as hard as I can drive. That ain't going through. Now, I could take my pickaxe and see how far the freeze goes, but I'd say there's probably a good 6 inches of freeze in there. So it's going to be a while before that goes out. Maybe if I still have some battery left, I'll get at this with a pickaxe just to see. Hopefully I don't break the pickaxe. These other guys over here, that's wood chips right here. You know, if I had lots of wood chips on there, I probably would have insulated it, but certainly 2 inches of wood chips doesn't do anything, right? This I put hay on in the winter. Let's give that a try. Some camera on that. Move that down a bit. This part here, there's a kale plant here that I left in the ground that I hoped would go to seed because it was just such a phenomenal plant. Really, it was the best of all my kale plants. So I'm hoping this survived the winter and go to seed this year so I can save the seeds. Actually, you know what? I see a bit of green down here. So, we'll see. Who knows? I want to... No. Okay, that's nothing. That's nothing. Hopefully it's still alive. I don't know. Maybe I should have put some plastic over it. You know, there's a kale plant here that seems to still have some green. I'd say this one's still alive. It's still hard. Stem's hard. This one, the stem's kind of spongy. Who knows? But this is the one I want to go to seed. So I mulched it really heavily here. So let's see if the ground... No. Oh no. Yeah, she's frozen. Not good. Oh well, whatever happens, happens. You can always buy seeds, right? That's the luck. You know, the world has not ended. You can still buy seeds, right? And I still have the parent plant that this came from. When I saved seeds, I got thousands of them. So at least for the next 5 years, they probably remain viable. I planted some of the seeds from this plant's parent over there in that cold frame a week ago. I probably won't germinate for another couple weeks because it's, you know, just so cold. We don't have consistent temperatures. All these other beds still frozen, I would imagine. Right, this was kohlrabi. I did not pick them all. Just didn't get around to it. Kept putting it off, and then they turned to mush. That's lesson learned, right? I like to show everything here. I like to show successes and failures, or just stupid mistakes or omissions, because it happens, right? Everybody has that sort of thing happen in the ground. This is garlic, so I don't want to go pounding in here. They're still frozen, right? They're frozen there, but this whole thing's garlic. I imagine they're fine. If you look over here, I put a good layer of, let's move the camera a bit closer. I put what is that sitting on? You see these stalks? This was what they call Jersey collards, or walking stick collards, or whatever you want to call these things. They grow up to 6 feet tall. I think mine were about this high. They're supposed to be a perennial. They're supposed to be able to come back in zone 7. I'm in zone 6, so I'd be very surprised if they survived. My plan was to put a heavy mulch here and put a plastic dome over this, just to create a dome 7-like. You know, with a dome, you basically change your zone to one zone lower, or sorry, one zone higher. So with a dome, you make your zone 5 garden into a zone 6 garden, and so on and so forth, give or take. So I should have done that to try to preserve these, but I didn't. Let's see if the ground is... Oh, she's frozen. Yep. So who knows? Just say a prayer for those guys. They're probably doomed, but oh well. This garden here got a heavy mulch with hay last year. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Through. So this isn't too bad. If I put some plastic over this, it'd probably be completely thawed in a week or so. I think I'm planning to plant beans here. I can't recall. There's one more spot here. Let's go over here. We're running out of battery. It's going to be a long video, a long meandering video. So this garden here is, I guess you'd call it a raised bed. I built it into the slope of this hill, right? There's a hill here that goes up. My kids call this the mountain. It's maybe 20, 30 feet high. Anyway, I mulched this whole thing with seaweed at the end of the year last year. The part beyond the plastic, I actually sowed parsnips last fall, just as an experiment. You can watch that video. I have a theory that they'll come in. We'll see. So I left that alone. Just left that go, right? And this side, this whole garden, I think I had beans and greens here last year, along here. But this year, because it's got a nice deep soil here, I thought I'd plant some roots like carrots and parsnips. I ran out of parsnips last week. My last of my parsnips, I ate them all. Man, so obviously not enough. Because we love them. And it seems like the longer in storage, the better they taste. They're just an amazing root crop to grow, and better than carrots in a lot of ways. You can't eat them raw, but when you roast them, I would say they have superior flavor, and they keep better than carrots. They keep, not only do they keep well, they seem to improve by being kept. Well, that's a great property. So I had a piece of plastic. I just decided to throw that on here to get things going. I'm not going to test this because the whole garden is frozen. Oh, why not? Okay, we're here. We're doing the long, crazy, all over the place video, so let's see. Just move this back a little bit. Mess up my whole system here. Let's just see. Yeah. Still frozen. As hypothesized. Alright, so that whole thing's still frozen, but I imagine with this plastic here, things will move along better than the other part of the garden, right? And it's just some plastic I had kicking around. Now this area, I did a video last fall called, I don't know, how to fix a lousy garden. This bed here is about, I don't know, 15 feet long by about 3 feet from front to back. And it catches a lot of water coming down off this hill. So it's good for growing anything that likes water. I think I'm going to grow potatoes in it this year. But I put manure on this, and I put a lot of hay on it. So I'm very curious to see what the situation is. Look at that. Looks like we're thawed, at least somewhat. So let's have a look in here just to see what we're dealing with. So there's a bit of a crust, but it's just a crust. It's a frozen crust, but other than that, underneath it's thawed. Right, so I got about 4 inches of Frosties type stuff, but then it's thawed. Right, so that's much better than the other uncovered parts of my garden. So happy with that. Happy with the way that's worked out. It seems like if you want to prevent your garden from freezing too bad and you want it to come back a bit quicker, a really heavy layer of hay is the way to go, based on this loosely designed, very loosely designed experiment. Seems like hay is the best insulator, and not only is it an insulator, but it's, you know, there's activity in here, right? This is constantly breaking down. If you put hay down a foot high, leave it for the summer, it's practically gone by the end of the summer. Anyway, so I thought I'd just do a video on that, give people a walk around. I've read a lot of gardening books, even fairly high profile, well recognized gardening books that say don't use a mulch, it'll keep your soil from thawing out. And I would say kind of I would come at that from another angle. If you apply enough mulch, as you can see with the leaves over there, it keeps your soil from freezing if you have enough of it, right? If you had 2 feet high of whatever, nothing would freeze, right? So if you apply enough of a mulch, it'll keep the soil from freezing, which means if it keeps it from freezing, it's going to thaw out a lot quicker, right? You saw the other parts of my garden where there's no mulch or very little, and they're rock hard ice, and I'd say it's probably that thick. And it's going to take a while for that to thaw out. We get some nice, you know, a nice stretch of warm sunny days, sure, but we're not going to get stretches of warm sunny days till May, because this is like a coastal region. We don't get that kind of stuff here. We get a sunny day, then a rainy day, then a sunny day, then a below zero day, and all sort of stuff. So things can take a while to thaw out. So if you're living in a place where you don't get a beautiful, nice, thick layer of snow, if you live in a sort of place where the snow comes down before the soil freezes, and it just accumulates all winter long, and then it melts in the spring, that snow is doing the work for you. It's insulating the ground. But if you live in a place where it snows and freezes and snows and freezes, if you want to make your soil more stable, a heavy mulch seems to be the way to go. And of course, if you want to jumpstart things and get things going a lot quicker, use some of these other techniques I've shown with the plastic, with the dome, or just various modifications of that. Using whatever materials you can get a hold of. If you want to go spend a lot of money, do that too. But if you have the time, or whatever you're able to do that. It depends on how you like to spend your time, or how much time you have, and what other commitments you have. But anyway, I hope that gave you some good ideas, some tricks and some techniques you can use to get things happening a bit sooner. I've found in my garden it makes a huge difference to get a head start like that. Even for getting things to germinate, you can plant things under plastic, and once you see them poking up through the ground, then you remove the plastic. There's lots of tricks you can do for that too, and I'm going to do some videos on that in the coming weeks and months. But I hope you found that useful. Hope you found that interesting. If you did, please subscribe, share, like, thumbs up, all that good stuff. Follow me on Facebook, and all that good stuff. Until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden, and thanks for watching.